They made me kneel on the floor of an airport in full dress uniform on the 4th of July with my hands cuffed behind my back while my 12-year-old daughter filmed me crying into her phone. If you walked past in that moment, what would you have seen? A decorated American soldier coming home from war, or just another black man causing trouble? And here's the part that still hits me in the gut. I had landed on U.S. soil less than 36 hours earlier after 142 days overseas. My name is Master Sergeant Elijah Washington, United States Army, and this is the story of how my homecoming turned into a public arrest, a national scandal, and a long, painful lesson about what my uniform really means in my own country. Before I dive into it, do me a favor, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. What country, what city? I want you to picture your own airport, your own flag, and ask yourself what you would have done if you saw this going down 10 feet away. For 142 nights, I had the same dream keeping me afloat. Sand in my boots, mortar rounds in the distance, head pounding from no sleep. And in the middle of all that, I'd close my eyes and see my little girl Amaya standing in some crowded terminal with a crooked glitter sign that said, "Welcome home, Daddy." In that dream, I'd walk off the plane, she'd drop the sign, sprint toward me, I'd lift her up, spin her around, and for a few seconds the world would feel simple again. That dream got me through a lot of nights I didn't think I'd survive. Dallas-Fort Worth Airport Terminal D. Morning of July 4th. That was supposed to be the day the dream finally came true. If you've ever flown through DFW on a holiday, you know the vibe. Flags draped on every wall, kids in star-spangled t-shirts, country music about freedom pouring out of cheap speakers, people trying to balance coffee carry-ons and patriotism all at once. Red, white, and blue bunting framed the glass, and if you took a picture without sound, it looked like a 4th of July postcard. Inside my head, though, it didn't feel like a postcard. It felt like coming off a mission. Boots still a little dusty from Afghan soil, shoulders tight under a dress uniform that fit better in a ceremony than an airport, ears tuned to every sound. I still found myself automatically scanning exits, reading faces, listening for anything that didn't belong. That's just what war does to your nervous system, you know what I mean? I had to keep telling myself, this isn't Helmand, this is Texas, you're home, breathe. Then I saw her. Amaya was right where we planned, standing near the baggage carousel with that giant sign in her hands. Glitter everywhere, letters uneven, the kind of sign only a kid can make with their whole heart. On it, in big shaky lines, she'd written, 142 days, welcome home, Daddy. She'd grown since I last saw her legs longer, face a little older, but those eyes were the same, big, bright, holding back tears and trying to be brave. She saw me, and her whole body just lit up like someone flipped a switch. She started running, sign bouncing against her knees, ponytail whipping behind her. In that second, everything else faded. The noise, the announcements, the flags. It was just me and my kid finally closing the distance between us. I took a step toward her. Then I heard it. Take that uniform off, right now. The words cracked through Terminal D so sharp even the baggage carousel seemed to hesitate. Conversations cut off mid-sentence, a coffee cup stopped halfway to someone's mouth, and somewhere behind me a baby burst into confused crying. I turned toward the voice and saw him. Airport police officer name tag, Boone. Mid-40s, thick-neck sunglasses, coffee shaking just a little in his hand like the anger in him didn't quite know where to go yet. He barked again louder. I said, now, soldier, you think you can play dress-up on Independence Day? For a split second, I thought he had to be talking to someone else. I glanced over my shoulder, but it was just me. Black man in perfectly pressed army dress blues ribbons lined up just the way the regs say, boots shined, posture straight. I had just walked off a plane from Atlanta that had brought me home from a war zone, and here I was being told to take off my uniform like I'd borrowed it for Halloween. Sir, I said, keeping my voice even, I just came off Flight 1427 from Atlanta. I'm back from Afghanistan. This is my uniform. His partner was a step behind him. Officer Kayla Roth. Younger jaw clenched tight like it might shatter if she relaxed for a second. Hair slicked back, hand hovering near her taser, in that way that makes your stomach drop even if you've done nothing wrong. Her eyes moved over my ribbons like she was checking counterfeit money, not medals. We got a report, she said, voice flat like she was reading a grocery list. Someone impersonating military personnel in Terminal D. I need to see your ID. Now, I've been in the Army long enough to know you keep your paperwork straight. I had my common access card and a protective sleeve, my driver's license, my deployment orders folded neat and laminated from being pulled out so many times. I handed them over carefully like I was passing a weapon. No sudden moves, no attitude. Everything's right there, officer, I said. Master Sergeant Elijah Washington, United States Army 3rd Infantry Division. I've been overseas 142 days. My daughter's right over your shoulder with a sign waiting for me. Boone took my cards like they were trash he didn't want to touch for too long. Glanced at them for maybe 3 seconds, snorted, then gave me this look that I've seen more times than I wish I had. These are easy to fake, he said. You get that uniform at a surplus store. Right there, I felt two things at the same time. One was the old anger, the one you learn to bury deep if you're a black man in this country who wants to survive into middle age. The other was an ice-cold fear because I knew where this could go if I let the first one out. I knew what it looks like when a black man in cuffs raises his voice in front of cops and cameras. If it were you standing there hearing that, what would you have done? Would you argue, would you demand respect, or would you swallow it all just to stay alive? I swallowed it. Sir, I said you can scan the QR codes, call base, confirm my orders, whatever you need. I'm happy to cooperate, but I'm telling you the truth. He wasn't listening. He didn't want truth, he wanted control. He shifted his coffee to his left hand and reached for my chest with his right fingers closing around one of my ribbons. He pinched the small strip of color between his fingers and tugged it forward like a tag on a shirt he was thinking of buying. This one, he said, lips curling, you buy this online too. I stepped back just enough that he didn't rip the whole front of my jacket off. I met his eyes, felt my jaw clench, forced my voice to stay almost gentle. That ribbon, I said slowly, is a Bronze Star. I earned it pulling my men out of an ambush in Helmand Province. I'm asking you not to put your hands on it again. You'd think that would make him stop. It did the opposite. Something ugly flashed across his face. Not just suspicion, something like resentment, like my calm and my service were personally insulting to him. Like somewhere under that badge and that hungover glare, there was a man who felt small and he'd just found someone he thought he could make smaller. You threatening me, he growled. He stepped in so close I could smell the stale coffee and last night's whiskey sweating out of his pores. His fingers twitched near his belt. Close enough to his gun, close enough to his taser, close enough to make my heart rate spike even as my face stayed still. The whole terminal seemed to lean in watching. I'm not threatening you, sir, I said. I'm telling you what that ribbon means. You're making a mistake. Phones started to rise around us like a forest of glass. You know that feeling when you suddenly realize you're the main character in 30 different videos you never agreed to be in. Families stopped walking. Kids stared. People whispered, "Is he real military and what's going on?" And then through all that noise, I heard the one voice that mattered. Daddy! Amaya! She dodged around a couple dragging suitcases, the glitter sign slipping from her fingers as she ran. For half a heartbeat, I saw the dream become real. My kid, my uniform, a crowd that might clap. Then Boone stepped directly into her path. Stay back, he snapped. She almost crashed into his chest. That's my dad, she cried. He just got back from Afghanistan. Please, just let me hug him. Roth shifted in front of her a little too, not quite blocking, but not letting her past either. Her hand moved toward the small black box attached to her chest where the body camera sat. I heard a soft click. The tiny red light blinked once, then died. Sun glare, she muttered, barely loud enough for anyone to hear. That was the moment the official record disappeared. If you ever wondered why some of these stories don't have footage, sometimes it's as simple as that. A thumb and a quiet excuse. Boone rolled his shoulders like he was getting ready for a fight. His voice dropped lower, colder. On your knees, he said. There are moments in your life that stretch out inside your head way longer than they last in reality. That order, those 3 words, did that to me. It wasn't just about kneeling. It was about what that posture means in this country when your skin looks like mine and your hands are being pulled behind your back. I heard my daughter's voice in my memory, the night before I deployed for the last time, sitting on the edge of her bed while she held onto my sleeve. Come home safe, Daddy. Don't fight unless you have to. I heard every briefing about what to do as a black man in uniform off base. I heard the quiet part they don't always say out loud. Don't give anyone an excuse to say you were the problem. I'm not resisting, I said, raising my hands a little fingers spread. But you're about to handcuff a U.S. soldier on the 4th of July in front of his child with half the terminal watching. I'm asking you to think this through. He didn't think. He shoved. My knee slammed into the tile so hard my teeth clicked together. My palms hit the floor. Roth's boot pressed between my shoulder blades as my arms were yanked back, cuffs snapping around my wrists so tight it felt like they were cutting skin. Somebody gasped. Somebody swore. Somebody whispered, "Oh my God, what are they doing?" From the corner of my eye, I saw Amaya's sign hit the ground in slow motion, glitter flying. She fumbled for her phone with both hands, fingers shaking so bad she almost dropped it twice. When she lifted it up, you could see the tears streaking down her cheeks, but her hand, somehow, stayed steady. "They're arresting my dad," she sobbed, going live without even thinking about it, just instinct. "He just came home. He's wearing his uniform." The internet entered the chat. It started as a trickle, A few viewers, then a dozen, then 100. People scrolling on their lunch break clicked out of curiosity. Someone shared it, then someone else. The number in the corner of her screen started climbing and it didn't stop. Meanwhile, down on that floor, my world shrank to three things: the bite of the cuffs, the sound of my daughter's voice, and the heavy weight pressing between my shoulder blades. I wanted to yell. I wanted to push up. I wanted to grab that badge and shove all my years of service in his face and ask him what he'd done for that flag today. Instead, I made myself breathe. Stay calm. Always calm. Because I absolutely knew that the moment I raised my voice, the moment I flexed against those cuffs, the story would change from soldier humiliated to aggressive suspect neutralized. And once that switch flips in people's minds, you rarely get it back. "Sir," I said quietly, "you're making a mistake." He wasn't listening. Roth's boot lifted a little and they hauled me up, marched me over to one of those cold metal benches by gate D22 and shoved me down. The cuffs stayed on. My shoulders ached. I could feel a warm trickle on my forehead where his ring had caught me. Across from me, Amaya stood at the edge of the crowd. The people around her were making space without even realizing it because they were all trying to get their phones up too. Her live counter ticked from thousands into the hundreds of thousands. Comments flew so fast they were a blur. A man stepped forwards out of the crowd, older gray hair, cropped short chest filling out a faded Marine Corps jacket. His eyes went straight to my ribbons. "You can always spot another service member. It's in the way they scan, the way they stand." "That's a real soldier," he said, voice like a drill sergeant. "Uncuff him, now." "Back off, old man," Boone snapped, "before I put you in cuffs too." The Marine took another step. "That star on his chest isn't for show. You disgrace every badge in this terminal with what you're doing." He never finished the thought. Roth was on him in a heartbeat, zip ties in hand. "Sir, step back," she ordered. He didn't. She looped the plastic around his wrists and pulled until it clicked. Somebody behind us yelled, "She zip-tied a Medal of Honor vet." I don't know if that part was true or not, but it didn't matter. The words themselves hit like gasoline on dry grass. The crowd's mood shifted from confused to angry. "Let him go," someone shouted. Then another. "Let them go." It turned into a chant, low at first, then louder, rolling through the terminal like a wave. Phones were everywhere now, over the heads of businessmen, next to kids in strollers held by grandmothers in church dresses. Some people were crying. Some were shaking with rage. Some looked excited just to be witnessing something dramatic. People are complicated like that. And here's your pattern interrupt. Right in the middle of all this chaos, someone in a flight attendant uniform stopped, looked at my chest, and said very calmly, "Those are legitimate service bars. He's not faking." Yeah, that happened. Airport security tried to push the crowd back. TSA huddled near their checkpoints, radios buzzing with overlapping voices. Somebody yelled that flights were being delayed. A pilot set his bag down and refused to leave the gate area until we were released. Another officer yelled back that this was an active investigation. The whole terminal started to feel like a pressure cooker. My training kicked in again. Not the marching, not the salute, the other training. Read the room, count the exits, watch how fear is moving. Fear is contagious. It jumps faster than a virus. I could see it in the way people's eyes darted from the badge to the gun to my skin to the flag hanging overhead. I looked at my daughter. "Stay where you are, baby," I called out, voice as steady as I could make it. "Keep recording. Don't come closer. Whatever happens, do not stop recording." Those words would end up on a million screens and in more than a few policy memos. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Backup finally arrived. More officers, more uniforms, more radios crackling with half information. They formed a loose line between us and the crowd trying to control a story that was already way out of their hands. Boone picked up his radio, turning just enough that he couldn't see my daughter's phone still aimed at his face. "Possible imposter resisted questioning," he said in that official tone you hear on cop shows. "Subject is in custody. Crowd is becoming hostile, requesting additional units." He didn't know every word was being broadcast live. While all that was happening in Terminal D, something else was happening across town that I didn't know about until much later. Remember that anonymous tip that supposedly started all this? The one about a fake soldier in dress blues. It wasn't a random caller. It wasn't some concerned patriot. It was a text from Boone's own 16-year-old son. "Fake soldier in blues. Terminal D. Bust him dad." A joke. A prank. A kid trying to get attention from a father who'd been losing control of his life for a long time. And his father decided to make that prank real. That was the first twist. The second came about an hour later. By then, my daughter's live stream had blown past 1 million views. Hashtags were popping up. #Justice for Eli. Uniform of honor. July 4, shame. Cable news producers were fighting over who would get the footage first. Airlines were putting out statements about respecting our service members. Somewhere in that mess, a call went out to a woman whose job was making sure stuff like this did not stand. Lieutenant Colonel Vanessa Park, 25 years in uniform JAG officer, the kind of woman who could make a 4-star general sit up a little straighter just by walking into the room. She saw the live stream somewhere over the state line, requested a redirect, and came straight to DFW. When she walked into Terminal D, people moved without even thinking about it. It wasn't about rank on her shoulders. It was the way she carried herself. Calm, but with that "you're not gonna like what I'm about to say" energy. "Enough," she said, and the word cut through the noise like someone turned the volume down on the whole world. She walked straight past the cameras, past the crowd, past my daughter, and stopped right in front of Boone. "Who authorized this detention?" she asked. Boone opened his mouth, then closed it, then tried to pull himself back together. "We received a tip about a possible imposter," he said. "Subject could not verify his ID. We're still investigating." She set a folder and a tablet down on the nearest flat surface, opened them with the casual precision of someone who already knows how this ends. "Department of Defense verification," she said. "Master Sergeant Elijah Washington, Bronze Star, Afghanistan. Service number here, discharge and redeployment dates here. You detained him 48 hours after his last active tour. You had all this information available and you ignored it." She tapped a few times on the tablet, then looked up again. "As for your anonymous tip," she said, voice like ice, "there's nothing anonymous about it. It came from a Cody Boone, age 16, your son." The air left his chest. I could see it even from where I sat. His shoulders dropped just for a moment. His mouth worked like he had a dozen excuses fighting to get out, and none of them could get past his teeth. "That's confidential," he snapped finally. "You can't just—" "Actually," she said, cutting him off, "I can. And I did. Your son tried to play a joke. You turned it into this." People who had been angry went silent. The crowd leaned in. Folks who had their phones down lifted them back up. Chief Marcus Delgado arrived a few minutes later. Head of Airport Police, old Marine Chemo, making his skin pale but not his eyes. He'd been watching the same live stream from his office, fingers wrapped around a mug of cold coffee, stomach twisting as he saw his badge on the wrong side of the story. When he came up to me, he didn't speak right away. He just looked. At my cuffs, at the blood on my temple, at my daughter still holding that phone like it was the only thing keeping me safe. Then he turned to Boone. "On July 4th, 21 years ago, my son died in Fallujah wearing a uniform. Just like that," he said quietly. "You don't get to throw it on the floor in my airport." He ordered me uncuffed on the spot. The click of the metal opening sounded like a bell in that terminal. The crowd erupted into applause so loud it drowned out the announcements. People cried. People cheered. Some people just stood there looking stunned, like they finally realized they'd witnessed something they'd be talking about for years. Delgado suspended Boone and Roth pending an investigation and announced an emergency tribunal for 3 p.m. that same day. "No, we'll review this quietly. No, we'll handle it internally." A tribunal. On the 4th of July. While the world watched. Sergeant Washington, Colonel Park, said to me later as we waited upstairs, "You don't have to be in that room. We can do this without you." I shook my head. "Ma'am," I said, "if they're going to sit around a table and talk about what happened to me, they're going to do it while I'm sitting there looking them in the eye." That tribunal room was small fluorescent lights, humming air conditioner rattling in the corner. No cameras, no crowd, just a table, some chairs, a monitor on the wall, and the smell of stale coffee. On one side sat Boone. No sunglasses now, just red eyes and clenched jaw. Next to him, Roth, looking like she hadn't slept in a week, fingers locked together so tight her knuckles were white. On the other side, me in my repaired dress blues, wrists still raw, back straight. Beside me, Colonel Park with her tablet glowing softly. At the head of the table, Chief Delgado. And at the corner, by Delgado's request, journalist Maya Chen, pen ready, eyes sharp. They played the live stream on the wall. Every second of my humiliation, every order, every shove, every tear from my daughter's face, every protest from the crowd. We watched it together. We watched Boone tell me to take off my uniform. We watched Roth turn off her camera. We watched my daughter beg millions of strangers to help her dad. When the video ended, no one spoke. Then Park started in with the data. 9 documented body cam deactivations by Officer Roth in the last year, she said, scrolling, all labeled sun glare interference. 14 complaints filed against Officer Boone in the last 3 years for excessive force and biased conduct, all closed as insufficient evidence. She slid printed copies of the complaints across the table. "This isn't one bad day," she said. "This is a pattern." Boone slammed his hand down. "You don't know what it's like out there," he snapped. "Every day somebody's pointing something at you. A phone, a lie, a weapon. You make one wrong call, you're dead, and nobody cares why you did what you did." Delgado leaned forward. "You think that's unique to you?" he asked softly. Try sending your kid to Fallujah and getting his body back under a flag instead of a welcome home sign. Then talk to me about pressure. Something cracked in the air right then. Roth spoke up, voice shaking. Chief, she said I have to say this. She admitted it all. How her partner had died in a mall shooting while her body cam captured every second, every scream. How she'd watched that footage so many times it felt burned into her brain. How after that she started convincing herself that if she turned the camera off, maybe the nightmare wouldn't be real the next time. I told myself I was protecting myself, she whispered, looking at me. But I wasn't protecting you. I saw the doubt in that report. I knew it felt off. I still let it go. I failed you, Sergeant. And I failed that little girl. I looked at her, really looked. Past the uniform, past the badge, at a human being drowning in her own fear and bad choices. Look, I said, owning it is the first step. But apology without change is just noise. What are you going to do different so it's not just noise? She nodded, tears sliding down her face. Whatever it takes, she said. Therapy training, bringing these stories into the academy. I don't want to be that officer again. And Boone, he couldn't stand it. Save it, he muttered. You shut off that camera same as me. Only difference is I got caught. Difference is I regret it, she shot back. Park laid down the final twist. She slid another printed page across the table toward Boone. These came from an anonymous email sent to multiple news outlets and the Department of Justice, she said. Copies of internal complaints, deleted camera logs, your disciplinary file. Your son sent them. He stared at the page like it was written in a language he'd never seen before. You turned my own kid against me, he said, voice cracking around the edges. No, Park replied calmly. You did that yourself. He just chose the right side of the truth. Then they asked if I wanted to say anything before the decision. I thought about all the people online calling me a hero for staying calm, calling me graceful, saying, wow, look how composed he was. I could never do that. To everyone out there saying, look how calm he was. I said, I need you to understand something. Calm isn't peace. Calm is what people like me learn to wear like armor. Because I knew sitting on that floor in cuffs on the 4th of July that if I raised my voice, if I let the anger I was feeling show on my face, I would stop being a soldier in people's minds and start being a threat. Threats get eliminated. That's what it means to carry this skin and this uniform at the same time. And we're tired of having to be calm just to survive. If it were you in that room hearing that, would it change anything for you? Would you keep telling yourself it's just a few bad apples, or would you finally admit the tree has some rot in it? Delgado cleared his throat, shoulders sagging like he'd been holding this weight for years. Officer Travis Boone, he said, reading from the findings, this department finds that you unlawfully detained. Master Sergeant Washington ignored clear identifying documentation, escalated without cause, and exhibited a pattern of biased conduct extending beyond this incident. Effective immediately, you are terminated for cause. Your badge and weapon are revoked. Your pension is under review. Your case will be referred to the state and federal authorities. He turned to Roth. Officer Roth, your failure to record your participation in this arrest and your history of camera deactivation are serious violations. However, given your admission, your trauma history, and your willingness to change, you are demoted, removed from field duty for at least 1 year, and required to complete intensive therapy and retraining. Your future in this department depends on what you do next, not what you say today. Then he looked at me. Sergeant Washington, he said, we failed you. You gave this country more than most people will ever understand. And we met you with handcuffs instead of honor. As a chief, as a Marine, as a father who lost a son in that same uniform, I am deeply sorry. I nodded. Not because that fixed everything, it didn't, but because sometimes a sincere apology with consequences attached is the only place you can start from. 6 months later, that tribunal felt like a lifetime ago. It was early winter in Dallas, the kind that plays at snow but mostly just gives you cold wind and dry hands. The city was setting up Christmas lights and holiday parades. Headlines had moved on to other scandals. The internet had found a new main character. But the changes from that day were still working their way through the system. Boone was gone from the force, fired, pension stripped. Name turned into a reference anytime somebody wanted to talk about what happens when arrogance, racism, and a badge collide. The civil suit my legal team and the Department of Justice filed left him working as security in a mall in Arlington, scanning receipts and watching over food court chairs instead of holding a gun and a radio. When people recognized him, he looked away. Do I feel sorry for him? No. Do I spend my nights wishing him pain? Also no. Walking around with what you did burned into your reputation, into your kid's email history, into the city's memory, sometimes that's punishment enough. Roth's path was rougher but in a different way. Desk duty, therapy sessions 3 times a week, Long days with paperwork instead of patrols, followed by longer nights where she finally let herself remember every face she'd tried not to see. About a month after the tribunal, I got a letter from her. Handwritten. "I see now that silence is its own kind of violence," she wrote. "I let my fear speak louder than your humanity. You didn't deserve that. Thank you for not meeting my worst with your worst." I never wrote back. I didn't know how to say I don't forgive you yet, but I see you trying without lying a little. So I did the next best thing. I folded the letter and slid it into the inside pocket of my jacket next to my bronze star. Not as a pass. As a reminder that people can either double down on their excuses or start doing the work. She chose the second. Chief Delgado retired 2 weeks after the tribunal. His cancer was catching up faster than he could outrun it. He refused to ride out his last months in a cushy office, though. He pushed through the early reforms. New body cam policies, a protocol that would eventually be named after him requiring tamper-proof storage, mandatory bias training with veterans and community advocates in the room. In his farewell speech, he said, "Today's supposed to mean freedom. Let's start acting like it costs something again." He donated his severance to a veteran suicide prevention fund in his son's name. When he passed, they folded a flag over his chest, and I stood at his grave and whispered, "Semper Fi, Chief. You stepped into the fire instead of walking around it." Colonel, now General, Vanessa Park took that same fire to Washington, testified in front of senators who nodded and frowned and asked questions they could have answered themselves from the live stream. She pushed for national reforms in how police interact with service members in body cam enforcement and data transparency. Some departments rolled their eyes, others listened. Change is slow, but it's faster when someone like her is shoving it along. Amaya turned our worst day into something none of us saw coming. Her live stream, clipped and edited into a short documentary called Uniform of Honor, went way beyond viral. Teachers started writing to ask if they could use it in their classrooms. Kids from all over the country sent her messages saying it made them see uniforms differently. She won an award for public service storytelling she didn't even know existed until they handed it to her. They asked her to speak too. Tiny black girl with a big voice standing in front of microphones and suits. She wore a little red pin in honor of Chief Delgado's son and said, "I didn't mean to go viral. I just wanted someone to help my dad. If you think this is just about him, you're missing the point." Me, I ended up with a new role. Still a master sergeant, still in uniform, but now half my time is spent in rooms with police departments, cadet classes, rookie officers sitting across from them and telling this story exactly the way I've told it to you. No PowerPoint, no sugarcoating, just the raw, uncomfortable details and some very direct questions. Do you see him as a soldier or a suspect? Do you think following a bogus tip protects you? Or do you think checking your bias might actually save someone's life? Are you willing to be the officer who steps in when your partner crosses a line, or are you content to be the one who turns off the camera? On that cold December morning, 6 months after Terminal D, Amaya and I drove out to the Dallas Veterans Cemetery with a wreath of white lilies. Rows of white headstones stretched out in all directions, names and dates and wars carved into stone. Some had fresh flowers, some didn't. I walked past them quietly, reading names like I was checking a roster. We found Chief Delgado's stone. Simple. Name, rank, dates, and at the base a small brass plate that hadn't been there the first time. He stood between right and wrong and chose right. We set the wreath down, stepped back, took a breath. A few rows over, a young black recruit stood alone, hands jammed awkwardly into the pockets of a uniform that still looked stiff and new. He kept glancing over at us, then away, then back again. Eventually, he walked over, nerves written all over his face. "Excuse me, Sergeant," he said. Are you the guy from that airport video?" I laughed under my breath. "I guess I am," I said. "At least that's what people keep telling me." He nodded, swallowed hard. "My mom showed it to me on her phone," he said. "She said, if you're going to wear that uniform, you better understand what it costs." I decided to sign up anyway. "So, thank you for not losing your cool. I don't know if I could have." I looked him over. The fresh creases, the nervous hands, the eyes that still believe the world could be better than it is. "Listen, son," I told him, "you don't fight for me. You fight for the guy next to you, for the people you swore to protect, and for the idea that this uniform means something beyond politics and hashtags. And when you come home, you fight to make sure nobody ever has to go through that terminal mess again. That's the job." As we walked back toward the car, Amaya slid her hand into mine. "Daddy," she asked quietly, "do you really think people change? Not policies, people." I thought about Boone scanning receipts in a mall, about Roth writing reports and going to therapy, about Delgado standing in front of cameras admitting his department had failed, about that young recruit at the cemetery, about every cop I'd talked to since who sat in the back of the room with arms crossed and eyes narrowed, then came up after everyone else left and said, that could have been me. I need to do better. Not all at once, I said, but piece by piece. Yeah, I think they can. Same way wounds close if you stop picking at them and actually treat them. Light snow started drifting down just a little. Texas snow, more for show than substance. The flakes caught the sunlight, and for a second they looked like tiny medals falling from the sky. Amaya pulled out her phone, took a picture of the rows of stone and the wreath and the flag flapping in the cold wind. 6 months earlier, that same sky had watched my humiliation on an airport floor, my hands bound behind me while my daughter begged strangers to help. Now it watched us walk away from a grave with something close to peace in our chests. I didn't want to be a symbol. I didn't sign up to be a hashtag or a case study or a documentary. I just wanted to come home, hug my kid, eat some barbecue, and try to sleep through a night without ducking at every loud noise. But the story didn't ask me what I wanted. It just happened. And once it did, the only choice I had was what to do with it. So now I'll put that choice in your hands. If you had been in Terminal D that morning, coffee in one hand, boarding pass in the other, and you saw a black soldier in dress blues pushed to his knees and cuffed while his little girl screamed and filmed, what would you honestly have done? Would you look away and tell yourself, they must know something I don't? Would you pull out your phone and record? Would you speak up and risk being the one they turned on next? Do you think what happened to me was a one-off disaster or a symptom of something deeper? We don't want to admit about race power and whose service we actually honor. And here's another hard one. Do you think my medals kept me safer that day, or do you think my skin made all of that irrelevant? I'm not here to give you a neat ending. Yeah, the bad cop got fired, the scared cop got help, the chief did the right thing before he died, and my daughter turned our worst day into a tool for change. That's satisfying. But it's not the whole picture. The controversial part is this. If I hadn't had that uniform on, if I hadn't had those medals, if my daughter's live stream hadn't gone viral, do you really think I'd be here telling you this story today? That's what I want you to wrestle with. So here's my call to action for you. If this story made you angry or hopeful or uncomfortable, I want you to talk about it in the comments. Tell me what you think should have happened to those officers. Tell me if you've ever been profiled or if you work in law enforcement, and this made you see something in yourself you didn't like. Do you think the system worked in the end, or do you think it only worked because millions of people were watching? Hit, like if you believe dignity has no color and that no uniform, soldier or cop, deserves to be used as a license to humiliate. Share this video with someone who still thinks these stories are just overblown drama. And subscribe if you want more real stories, not fairy tales about what justice looks like when it has to fight its way through handcuffs, hashtags, and human hearts. Because at the end of the day, it's not the cloth on our backs that decides who we are. It's what we do when somebody kneels in front of us, and whether we choose to put our hands out to help them up or on the cuffs to push them down.